In the autumn of 2019, 65-year-old Susan Mauldin went missing. A British retiree who loved knitting and gardening, Sue was not a lady known to make enemies. Nonetheless, the investigation into her disappearance uncovered a disturbing series of events. And it was a story that was questioned right up to the end. Hi there, I'm Kevin, and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. Today's case is a chilling one. It's about uncovering hidden secrets and murderous intentions. Let's take a look. British-born Susan Mauldin was a military wife. When it came time to retire, she and her husband immigrated to the United States. In Fleming Island, Florida, the couple built their house. They were amongst the first of what would become a large population of retired couples choosing to live in the area over the following years. By age 65, Susan was widowed, but she had built a large and strong network of good friends in Fleming Island, as well as further afield. Descriptions of Susan from those who knew her best were adoring, if unfortunately a bit cliched. A member of the local British club, the English housewife was said to love a good cup of tea. She was also a keen gardener. She was regularly spotted in her front garden tending to her flower beds. She loved to entertain her friends, and she was a longtime member of a knitting circle. Breaking slightly from the mold, Sue had also embraced her American home. She was a passionate and vocal fan of Jacksonville football. Although Sue had no children herself, she was a motherly figure to her younger neighbors. One local called her the grandmother everybody would like to have.
Everybody loved her. Everybody here loves her. She knows everybody.
Sue is a very warm, kind, generous lady that will give you the shirt off her back. She is just like a grandmother that everybody would like to have.
On October 23, 2019, Susan left for her regular hair appointment at the salon. It was the last time that friends or neighbors would see her alive. That day, she had generally carried on with her regular routine. She placed pumpkins and other festive decorations on her front porch in anticipation of Halloween, telling friends that she intended to hand out candy to trick-or-treaters in a few days' time. However, the day after her hair appointment, sightings of Sue around the neighborhood ceased. A sociable neighbor, her absence during this time was notable. A missing persons report was made by close friends Phyllis and Daniel Yates. Phyllis had received no answer on Sue's home phone for 2 days. Stopping by the house, she found that her friend's car was in the drive, but when she knocked, no one came to the door. An initial plea for information was made by the Clay County Sheriff's Office, stating that, at that point in time, there were no signs of foul play. They sought only to contact Susan to ensure her well-being. As the days passed, concerns grew. Halloween came and went, the pumpkins still sitting on Susan's front step. There was no activity on her credit cards, no answer to calls or texts on her cell phone, and no contact with her closest friends. The sheriff's status of Susan's case was upgraded to missing and endangered.
In this quiet neighborhood lies a mystery. Susan Mauldin lives here, but no one has seen her in 2.5 weeks.
And tonight, Clay deputies need your help finding a woman who is believed to be missing and in danger for more than 2 weeks. Neighbors worry and they want her back.
She would never have gone away, just gone away, never. Because I know she's not alive. She would be here if she was alive.
There's no indication during the course of our investigation that Miss Mauldin left her home willingly. Her vehicle is still at the house. There were signs that she was to be there at the house and no indications of leaving.
Clay County investigators entered Susan Mauldin's home seeking clues related to her disappearance. Inside the front hallway by the door, they noted picture frames skewed on the wall. In the living room, figurines that once sat on tabletops had been knocked to the floor. But aside from a handful of scattered items, the house was not in disarray. At first, investigators found only a single small droplet of blood visible in the living room. The remainder of the house appeared to the naked eye to be spotless. Luminol testing was performed thoroughly twice. The aim was to detect any blood spatter that may have been cleaned up. There was evidence of a stain on a lampshade in the living room, and a further smear detected in the kitchen. Taken as a whole, the evidence pointed to the ground floor of the house as the scene of a struggle. There was no blood found in the garage, which suggested Susan may have left through the front door. If they could find Susan, investigators anticipated a severe injury, if she was, in fact, still alive. Sue's car was in the garage, but her cell phone was missing. Notably, so was her computer, a laptop. Investigators suspected there was information held on that computer that someone was desperate to hide. Stealing it was a crude and perhaps panicked way to keep that information private. Maintaining your privacy online is not only a concern for those with nefarious intentions. Indeed, taking steps to stay safe and protected on the internet is something we should all be doing. That is why I'm pleased to introduce Surfshark as the sponsor of this video. Surfshark is an award-winning premium VPN service giving you access to over 3,200 servers in 100 countries with one simple click. Check out surfshark.com/thoughtlounge for the special limited time offer. Using the Surfshark app and browser extension means that your location remains private, while granting you safe and secure access to websites that may be restricted in your country. One click will also protect you from hackers when connected to public Wi-Fi. These connections can be risky because they can expose your personal data to a number of threats, including stolen passwords and banking information. Just last week, my mom found that someone had managed to acquire her credit card number and used it to book a room at a Hyatt hotel somewhere in Texas. Thankfully, she caught the transaction and reported it before further charges were made. Incidents like that one are unfortunately not uncommon, which is why Surfshark provides such a great service. The Alternative ID tool conceals the information that you enter online. Alternate ID creates a brand new identity and a proxy email for one-time use websites or others with vague protection practices. This allows you to shield your info and avoid data leaks, as well as a spam-filled inbox. If you're not looking to pay for someone else's hotel room in Texas, go to surfshark.com/thoughtlounge for 4 extra months of Surfshark at a special limited time discount. Sue's laptop was not the only item that appeared missing from her home office. Investigators found that the widow had kept a meticulous filing system. Sue seemed to have retained everything. She even had a designated place for instructional booklets and her oven warranty. So when they came across one file that was empty, it sparked their curiosity. The file was labeled Binderum Remodeling. A search of the business found that it was owned and operated by 45-year-old Corey Binderum, though the business license renewal had lapsed due to non-payment. The company undertook small-scale houseworks such as new flooring, cabinets, and apparently remodeling bathrooms. When investigators searched Sue's home, they found her guest bathroom in a state of disrepair. The bathtub had been torn out and the tiling removed, rendering it essentially unusable. Corey Binderum, friends said, had been hired to do the work a full 8 months earlier. Sue, it seems, had been growing increasingly more frustrated with the contractor. This animosity was the only point of contention or controversy in Susan's life that anyone could point to.
We know that for 8 months he let her on. He took her money, said he was going to do the work, and then he didn't do it, and then he didn't do it, and then he didn't do it. And he would say he was going to come in and get the work done or come and see her, and he wouldn't show up. And so we were concerned about the fact that he was taking her for a ride, and she was very upset about it.
According to Sue's confidants, the dispute with Corey Binderum had been coming to a head in the days before her disappearance. Susan reported paying Corey $12,000 to do the work in April of that year. Though after tearing up the bathroom, he refused to return to complete the agreed work. Investigators further found that he was not qualified to do the plumbing required for the job. Sue reported to one friend that she was afraid of being alone with him. She stated that she felt intimidated by him. Despite this, she had had enough of his treatment of her. She told friend Phyllis Yates that if she did not get her money back, she was going to the police. According to others, Sue planned to confront Corey on the day she disappeared.
He'd say, I need rent money, Sue. I have to have rent money. Or then it was, my wife is in the hospital. My mother's in the hospital. When she was going to meet him, she came over to us and she said, I've told him that he owes me $12,000. He's to meet me with a certified check. I'm not going to put up with any more of his nonsense. 20 million reasons why he couldn't come.
She literally said, I should have checked things out more, and I didn't, and I've let this go on too long, and now I need to get my money back that I've given him. That was the last time I ever talked to her.
Although the remodeling dispute was the only identifiable conflict in Sue's life, it was still quite a leap from plumbing to murder. When lead detective Fryer of the Clay County Sheriff's Office spoke with Corey Binderum on October 29th, 4 days after Sue had last been seen, the contractor tried to clear up a key detail of the rumors swirling around their business arrangement. Susan had not paid him $12,000 for the bathroom, but rather only $1,200, he said. He met her at her home on October 25th, handed over a check for that amount, collected the bin and tools that he had left at the job, and he left.
I was supposed to be there between 8 and 8:30. I got there about 8, maybe a little bit sooner.
Was she expecting you?
Yeah, we had a meeting that way.
So what was her state of mind when you left her? Was you obviously the last one to talk to her?
Oh, I am.
Yep.
There wasn't any signs or indications.
According to Corey, Sue had dragged her feet on some decorating decisions, changing her mind about the tiles at least once. This caused initial delays, and she grew unsatisfied. But he had agreed to pay her money back, producing for police a copy of the check he had written her for just over $1,290.
She gave you $12,000?
No,
$1,200.
$1,200.
It was only $1,200.
Yeah, it was only $1,200
for the whole event.
Yeah, well, I don't take any money for labor.
It's like $1,295, and then what's that?
54.
If you read right here, it clearly says $1,295.54.
On the morning of October 25th, the camera on a school bus making stops along Sue's street captured Corey's pickup truck parked in her driveway at roughly 8:30 a.m., exactly when he reported visiting the house. Tracing his full movements that day, the detectives found that the contractor made multiple stops at the local Home Depot. On his first trip at 7 a.m., Corey purchased 2 60-pound bags of concrete and a box of large heavy-duty construction bags, the type used to dispose of building waste. Following the visit to Susan Mauldin's, Corey made a stop that was of particular interest to detectives. Between 9:12 and 9:19, he dumped 300 pounds in the construction area of the landfill at the Rosemary Hill Solid Waste Management Facility. Following that stop, he called in sick to his current job and went home. But he did not stay there. Twice more that day, Corey got into his truck and drove past the waste management facility. He also made one more brief stop at his storage unit. County investigators brought a police dog named Wally, trained in detecting the scent of human decomposition, to the storage facility. They let the dog off lead and followed Wally to the unit that she identified, the unit rented by Corey Binderum. Once inside, they gave Wally free rein to look around. This time, she narrowed in on a single plastic bin, as well as a bag of tools, the same items that had been taken from Susan's home. Visible behind these items was an open box of construction waste bags from Home Depot. When Detective Fryer spoke with Corey again on November 1st, a few days following the first interview, he came prepared with the proof that the contractor had been lying. Between Susan's meticulous record keeping and the financial information they were able to obtain, It was obvious that Corey had been paid more than $1,200 for the work in Susan's home.
She had an extensive, meticulous, detailed list of things and why she did not want to talk to you and why she was done with you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like all the times that you were supposed to be working there and you didn't.
That doesn't have anything to do with her missing.
You know you lied to me, right?
About what?
You owed her $12,000 and I have all the checks that she wrote out to you. Why would you lie about that? Because $1,200 is a big difference than $12,000.
Right. Because after I left, I'm sure you pulled my phone records. She's letting me do, she's going to let me do the master, but that's not until January.
So where's the rest of the $12,000?
The rest of it is when we do the master for cabinets and everything else. I know what you think, the display that you guys put on.
Yes, sir.
This isn't fair. I didn't do what you think I did.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely not fair.
So can you tell me what happened to her?
I don't know. I don't have any clue. We shook hands. I left. That's it.
I'm on pier right now and you're coming to a short end. So I'd like to talk to you about that before we get to the end of the pier, if you'd like to do that.
I haven't done anything wrong.
I'm not saying you did, but...
Well, you're saying checking boxes, but I don't necessarily believe that. I think you guys have pegged me, and I think you've got tunnel vision. You've talked to me twice. You've looked at my storage unit. Now, you're more than welcome to take my truck, regardless of whether you have a warrant or not.
Okay.
I don't have anything to hide.
A search warrant was obtained for Corey's truck, but it did not contain the evidence that investigators had anticipated. In the console were multiple receipts for Home Depot. Corey purchased building supplies there regularly, including having previously purchased bags of concrete and waste disposal bags. In the bed of the truck, where investigators believed that Corey had loaded Susan's body alongside his tool bag, no blood or DNA was found to establish a link between him and the assumed crime scene at her house. A search warrant for Corey's house likewise returned no connection at all to the crime, despite evidence that the contractor had made multiple stops at his house on the day that the alleged murder took place. Additionally, investigators found that Corey made trips to the Rosemary waste facility multiple times a week. There was nothing out of the ordinary about that visit either. On the day in question, Corey chose to sign in at the facility as a local resident, instead of using his business license to enter. This meant that he chose to sign his name and provide identification upon entering. Corey either failed miserably to hide his suspicious disposal at the dump that day, or he had nothing to hide. The Rosemary Solid Waste Management Facility is a temporary disposal point. Trash from Rosemary is taken to the Chesser Island landfill in Folkestone, Georgia. Investigators learned that the Rosemary waste from October 25th had been dumped in a designated location in that landfill. And in a potential stroke of luck, this was the last dump made in that location. The FBI was called in to lead a systematic effort to comb through that section. They began on the 21st of January, working 12-hour shifts to sift through the trash. As the search commenced, Corey Binderham took off. To the surprise of his wife and 2 teenage daughters, Corey left for work one day and did not come home.
The facts and circumstances developed during the course of this investigation have led us to believe an individual identified as Corey Binderham has pertinent information related to this case. Mr. Binderham has cooperated during the course of this investigation, but until recently, he's left the area all of a sudden with no explanation, and his whereabouts are unknown at this time.
Whether Corey was fleeing a potential murder charge or something else was an open question. During this time, an allegation of fraud emerged from another of the Binderham remodeling clients, asserting that Corey had stolen a check for $5,000, forged the client's signature, and taken the money. St. Johns County Sheriff's Office made a post requesting that any residents that may have experienced similar incidents come forward. By this time, law enforcement had pieced together what they believed was Corey's financial motivation to scam clients, and perhaps to kill Susan Mauldin. They discovered that Corey was addicted to steroids and cocaine. Drugs were located in his home. According to a former employee of the remodeling business, Corey had been battling the addiction for some time. He was hiding it from his wife and daughters and funding his activities through construction fraud. With the public on alert for Corey Binderum, the 45-year-old eventually turned himself into authorities to face fraud charges. The search for Susan Mauldin continued. The FBI spent over a week straight in the Chester Island landfill. They had recovered multiple construction waste bags, similar to those used by Corey, but had failed to link any contents to Susan's disappearance. On the 9th day of the effort, the FBI announced they would end the search the following day. Hours later, they recovered human remains. Also recovered were pieces of clothing and a tarp-like material. This was later determined to be a construction waste bag. Inside that bag were the remains of Susan Mauldin.
This morning we are confirming that the remains of 65-year-old Clay County resident Susan Mauldin were recovered last week from the Chester Island landfill in Folkston, Georgia. Mauldin was reported missing on October 25th, 2019, and last night, 45-year-old Corey Binderum was detained for the murder of Susan Mauldin.
Corey Binderum was indicted for first-degree murder. Investigators believed that his purchase of materials at Home Depot that morning had been in anticipation of killing Susan at her home later that day. When he arrived at her house, he backed his pickup truck to the far end of her driveway, anticipating that he would need to carry out her body. They speculated that his motive was financial. She had demanded thousands of dollars back from him that he no longer had. The state would pursue a death sentence for the crime. The case eventually went to trial in 2024. Analysis of the remains determined that Susan likely died of strangulation. 2 of her fingernails were found to have DNA under them. Based on the state's theory of the crime, this DNA should be a match to Corey Binderum, deposited there during the struggle they assumed happened inside her home. When the results were returned, however, this was not the case. The first nail returned a match to Susan alone. The second nail had 2 profiles, both unknown. One was likely male. Crucially, Corey Binderum was excluded as a match. Nonetheless, the state pushed forward. They argued the sample was likely contaminated from the landfill, though the nail had been discovered by the medical examiner inside of the waste bag and was the cleaner of the 2 that were tested. The state argued that Corey killed Susan because her threats to report him to police and pursue legal action for her refund would have revealed his drug addiction, other acts of fraud, and ruined his home life. The defense pointed to the holes in the case, primarily the physical evidence. There was no DNA linking him to the crime. Indeed, the DNA under her fingernails alone was reasonable doubt that he was her attacker. In addition, Corey had been at the house that morning for under 40 minutes. Was that enough time to cover his tracks so thoroughly?
The drugs, the lies, collapsing his life around him. It would all be exposed. But he could not let that happen. So we took care of the problem. He prepared. He got up that morning, he left his house, he went to Home Depot at 7:04 a.m. and he bought the burial shroud that he would lay Miss Mauldin to rest in. Those 10 bags.
The timeline of bringing Miss Mauldin from 07:48 or 7:48 in the morning to 08:25, about 37 minutes. It's too short of a time to kill someone and clean them out. Too short of a time. Murder are not guilty to all counts because there is reasonable doubt in this case based on that fingernail.
By the time the case went to trial, Corey's wife of 20 years had become his ex-wife. Cassidy testified that she learned of her husband's issues with drugs only after the police performed the search warrant on their family home. She told the jury that she was utterly unaware of the amount of money Corey was apparently making through his business. She had never heard him mention a client named Susan Mauldin. As his troubles came to light, she began to question her husband and verify his movements.
And when you observed the Ring camera from him coming home around 8:44 a.m., what did you see on that camera?
So there were a couple of things. One thing that I noticed was when he arrived home and when he left, he was in different clothes. He did change clothes. The other significant thing was he backed his truck into our garage and shut the garage door. And this stands out to me because I remembered when I saw the footage thinking to myself, well, that's not going to close, that it was going to hit the truck and that it wasn't going to go all the way down, but it did. That was something unusual because I'd never seen him do that before.
So he did not typically park inside the garage?
No, not with the truck. He had a large Tundra, and I was surprised that it even fit.
After years in custody awaiting trial, Corey had plenty of time to chat with his fellow inmates. The state called one of these men, an apparent confidant of Corey's, who testified that the former contractor admitted to having an argument with Susan, losing his temper, and strangling her to death.
Tell us what he did or what he told you.
He said that she started getting loud and he was trying to shut her up. So he hit her or something. And then he started screaming and choked her out or something.
All right. You're doing something with your hands that the jury cannot see. Can you lift your hands and show us what you're doing with your hands?
That's what it looked like to me.
All right. Did he make that motion with his hands when he's telling you about it?
Yeah.
As the case was based on circumstantial evidence, the state leaned into common sense. Corey Binderam had motive. He was the last known person to see Susan. He purchased the same bags that her remains were found in the morning she disappeared. And she was located exactly where she would be if he had disposed of her at the Rosemary facility later that day. There was no blood or DNA in his truck, his home, or his storage unit. The waste bags were commonly used by many contractors. The DNA under Sue's fingernail was from an unknown male. The defense proposed an alternative scenario. Because Sue had been unhappy with Corey's work, or lack thereof, she had been actively contacting other contractors and making arrangements for them to visit her house to quote on the work. She had appointments booked with a handful of other contractors over the same time period that she went missing. Susan missed an appointment that morning at 10:30 a.m. The lead investigator on the case, Detective Fryer, had been subsequently fired from the sheriff's office after Corey's arrest. One reason for his dismissal, cited by the newly elected sheriff, was his illegal possession of evidence in a homicide investigation, that of Susan Mauldin. The detective allegedly held the tape-recorded interviews with Corey at his home instead of at the station with other materials. Defense pointed to the disgraced detective and said that he pursued Corey Binderam with blinders on. The investigation did not examine the other contractors as potential suspects after discovering Corey's issues with drugs. And the supposed confession he made to another inmate came much later, after he had already been pinned for the crime. These types of admissions are notoriously unreliable. Even if the jurors believed the testimony of Corey's fellow inmate, the murder as described in this alleged confession was an act of passion, the result of an argument. It was not premeditated, first-degree murder.
Corey Binderam did not kill Susan Mauldin. Unknown persons or persons, probably a contractor she was meeting with. One she was communicating with online because that's why her computer is missing. Came through her front door, attacked her into her living room, and into her kitchen. The proof of that is the foreign DNA under Susan Mauldin's fingernail. The proof that Mr. Benner did not kill Susan Mauldin is that there is no blood, no DNA from Susan Mauldin in Susan Mauldin's garage, no DNA or blood from Susan Mauldin in Corey Benderum's truck, in his truck bed, none in his storage unit, none on those tubs or tools that were in his truck bed, nothing in his home.
From 8:25, 8:30, 8:30, whatever it was in the morning when the defendant left. She did not appear for an appointment at either 10 or 10:30. It was either 9 minutes, 120 minutes. Over 90 minutes, somebody else there randomly stumbles into her house, takes nothing, kills her, and somehow he took the bags, he took the box of the bags. You see him in the secure care storage unit. Somehow that person gets their hand on bags, kills her, puts them in the bags, and takes them to the same dump that he's at 3 days in a row, three times that day. And that flies in the face of logic and common sense. He gives her this $1,200 check that he shares with Deputy Lunsford, missing. That's gone. Did you catch this one? Police are searching the truck a few days into November. The white truck, you catch police come over, they search the truck. You know what was in the center console of that truck? Home Depot receipt from 3 or 4 days earlier. Home Depot receipt from 2 or 3 days earlier. Home Depot receipt from the day before. Home Depot receipt for October 24, 2019 at 11-something a.m. The one that's missing! The one that's missing is the one when he bought her kid. That's gone. Watch all the evidence that you heard about in this trial. The comment about the police, the timing of her comment. He paid Susan Mauldin a partial check. It was never cashed. He admits to being at her residence the morning she disappeared. He admits getting the items, the tool bag from the residence that the dog was working on. This is all undisputable. You watch, you see the evidence sitting in a storage unit. He doesn't tell Deputy Lunsford he was at Home Depot early that morning. He doesn't tell Deputy Lunsford he was at the Rosemary Hill Station that morning. Both those places link him to her death. He doesn't mention in that trial. Casual conversation with Deputy Lunsford. All her friends say this woman had one issue in her life. This fight with the defendant. The detection dog, off leash, goes to the defendant's storage unit. Oh, by the way, twice. He then alerts on the tool bag and the items with it. So this dog didn't get it right once, he got it right twice.
The jury deliberated for a little under 4 hours before returning a verdict.
State of Florida versus Corey Benderman. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment.
The jury then moved into the penalty phase of the trial, in which they would again take a vote, only this time over the application of the death penalty. The state argued that there were 4 aggravating factors. Corey had previously been convicted of a felony back in 1992. He stole money from Susan and then killed her for this monetary gain. He was also seeking to avoid arrest by preventing her from reporting him to authorities. In Florida, a minimum vote of 8-4 must be reached in favor of the death penalty for this sentence to be applied. The vote came back 7-5. Corey Benderum was saved from death by a single vote. He will serve life in prison without the possibility of parole.
She was a very nice person. She was a lot of fun. She was a keen gardener. I have plants in my garden to remind me of her. And I will miss having tea with her. She was always good for a good cup of tea.
That was the tragic case of Susan Mauldin. Thank you once again for joining me, and a special thanks to Motor City Sleuth for joining our Members Lounge. I'm Kevin. This is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.
scene plays. Tell me who the scream saves. I can hear the cries repeat. Gotta take my time, cause these crimes get deep. But these stories can't hide, let me find my seat. Kevin, go ahead and settle in. Gotta be selective, doing all the research, keeping it objective. Always been effective, can say he got